Hello everybody, Jeep here. So I've been working on a new game for about a year, and it's a Korean game, and so I haven't really taken the time to explain what it is in English to all the people I know who don't speak Korean. So I'm just going to take a little time here to explain it, and the whole story kind of behind it and kind of what's been going on over the last year has gotten a little bit crazy, and so I just want to kind of explain that crazy story so you have an idea of what's going on, sort of maybe outside of the realm of what you're normally paying attention to. So the name of the game is Sangun, and Sangun is a made-up Korean word. It's not a real word, but it just means twin carrot. But anyway, I'll explain what that is as we go. In short, this is a Wordle-like game. It's based on Wordle, but it uses Korean as the main word that you're trying to find. And so yeah, I'm just gonna talk through where it came from and where it's going and all that stuff. Here we go. So first of all, for the last 3 years, I've been working for a company called Snowden Games in Ottawa, Canada. It's the largest game development studio in Ottawa. Yeah, just really great group of people to work with. We tend to work with other game development studios. We help them out with the games that they're working on, either with various features or porting, or sometimes we do games fully in-house. But anyway, one time, about a year ago, I was working with a client, and this client just happened to be in Sweden. And Sweden, as you know, is pretty far away from Canada, and the time difference was a lot. And so when our team usually works with an external team, we try to get to know the people on the team really well. We try to have fun together and get to know each other. And with the time zones being very different, instead of playing online games simultaneously together, we could play asynchronous games. And so, Wordle, which is these days, it's very popular. Everybody would play Wordle and post their score in a forum. And then at the end of the day, we would compare the scores that everybody got. And then at the end of the week, we'd add up all the points, and the person who got the most points would be the winner that week, and they would get the little prize. And every single week, we would play a different Wordle-like game. So we played games like Wordle and Nerdle and Global and dozens of variations. And it was a good way to get to know each other, just have fun. And so as we were playing all these different games, we came across Zordle, Fibble, Wormel, and all three of these games happened to be created by one of my former coworkers. And so this coworker and friend of mine, when I realized that he worked on these games, I contacted him and I was like, hey, we're playing your games and here's what people think. And, it was just a really kind of cool coincidence. And so as I was playing these games, it got me thinking. I was like, wow, I play a bunch of these games, but I never thought about actually, you could just make one of these games. Here's a guy who made 3 of them. Maybe I could try to make one. And since Korean is a hobby for me, I was like, it'd be really fun to make a Korean-style Wordle game. But instead of programming one right away, I just made the rules for the game. In the upper left, you can see the rules here. Don't worry about understanding it. I'll explain it later. And then I contacted my Korean language exchange partner, and I said, hey, here's the rules for this game. Just guess a word and I'll tell you, what clues you get, and then you can respond back to me, and I'll respond with the next clue, and then you can guess again. We keep repeating this until you find the word. And this was a fun way to just test the rules of the game without having to do any programming work. And it was also a way of kind of refining the game across many different weeks. We changed the rules a little bit here and there to make it more fun, to just find ways to improve on the game. I sort of ran into a problem when I started playing with a couple other language exchange friends. This program is called KakaoTalk. KakaoTalk is the main chat platform that everybody in Korea uses. And so if you look at this image, there's a sort of in the upper left corner and the upper middle. The upper middle is what it looks like on smartphone, and the upper left is what it looks like on PC. And so when they're displaying these sort of colored boxes on PC, it ends up just looking like this, grayscale image, and it's impossible to really tell what the clues are. And so my friend that I was testing this with got really frustrated because he's like, I can't tell what these clues are. And when he sent me the screenshot, I was like, oh, okay, I see why you're confused. And so what I did is I was thinking, instead of using colors, what I could do is use shapes to explain the hints. And so that's why sort of on the right and the bottom left here, you can see that I changed the hints from being colors to being fruits and vegetables. And the way these fruits and vegetables are written is that each of them is a pun that is sort of a mnemonic device that helps explain what the purpose of the clue is or how the clue works. And so that's where the carrot comes from, actually. Is in Korean, carrot is 당근, and saying something is exactly right is 당연. 당근, 당연. And so they're very, very similar words. And so there's actually an existing pun in Korean where when people want to say, wow, that's exactly right, they say, oh, 당근이죠, which is, instead of saying, yeah, that's exactly right, it means it's a carrot. And so sometimes people will sort of relate the idea of a carrot to being exactly right. And so in the game, when you're guessing these words, if you get 2 carrots, that means you got the word exactly right. That's the double carrot, the twin carrot, the 상근. After that, the game started making sense, and so I spent some time to develop it as just a quick web application. The nice thing about this is my friends could play the game without having to have me directly there, answering every single prompt that they gave me. And so yeah, here's the game. So I want to explain just for a very brief second how the Korean language works, because it's hard to explain this game without that. So you can see that every word that you're trying to guess in this game has 2 syllables. Because in Korean, each symbol is a syllable that contains consonants and vowels. And so it's actually very much like the English alphabet, which has consonants and vowels. In English, they're arranged from left to right, and you just read left to right. In Korean, they're arranged into syllable blocks. And so if you sort of look at this chart on the right, the first one has a consonant in the upper left, a vowel on the right, and then a consonant below. The second one is arranged vertically. You have consonant, vowel, consonant. The third one is just one consonant, one vowel, so you have consonant, vowel. And then the fourth one is from left to right, you have consonant, vowel. That's just the basic structure. And in this game, you're always guessing 2 syllables, and then you get 2 hints back. The first hint is for the first syllable, and the second hint is for the second syllable. Like I said, these are all puns. So apple in Korean is called sagwa, but the word for apology in Korean is also sagwa. They're both sagwa. So when you see an apple, sagwa, it means, oh, I apologize because none of these consonants or vowels are in the word that you're trying to guess. None of them are in the word. So please accept my apology is what that apple means. And the eggplant in Korean is kaji. Kaji means eggplant, but kaji also means to be in possession of something. So kaji in this game just means that among the consonants and vowels, exactly one of those consonants and vowels is correct, and then the others are not correct. That's kind of the basics. I'm not going to explain every single clue, but just understand that each syllable gets a clue, and then that clue tells you some important information about how that syllable is related to the correct answer, basically. And based on those clues, you can logically deduce what the correct word is. And just like in Wordle, you can only guess real words. You can't guess a mishmash of fake letters. You have to make a real word when you guess. So then I sort of ran into this problem where I had a bunch of friends playing the game, and I started to realize that depending on what type of phone or what type of browser or what type of PC they were using, everybody was getting a different image for these hints. And some of them looked okay, and some of them I thought looked really ugly. And I kind of hated how it was so inconsistent. Like everybody was seeing like different types of these fruits and vegetables. So what I decided to do was make my own images for these. I'm not an artist. I really needed some help from AI. And so in the upper left corner, this is sort of the originals that came back. And in the rest of the space, you'll see these are the modified images that I made. Like, for example, the apple, instead of being happy, the apple is very sad because, again, that's, it's giving an apology. I had to add a face to the banana and, change these things around a little bit. The other thing that I did when I was testing this was to make a story that goes along with the game. And when you play the game, each time you win, you get a new piece of the story. It's like kind of like a fairy tale. It's a very traditional Korean style fairy tale. It tells the story of this girl who's running a vegetable store. One day, a tiger comes in and takes a bunch of the fruits and vegetables, and she's very sad about that. So she starts locking the shop door and then asking the patrons to give a password before they can enter the shop. The tiger gets a laptop PC and he's connected to the internet. And so by pretending to be a person, he can find out what the password is. She, instead of having just a password, instead creates this puzzle where people will guess the password, and then she'll hold up one in each hand, a vegetable and a fruit. The patrons sort of know what those hints are and then can make another guess, repeat until they find the correct word. Tigers, at least in Korean folklore and Korean fairy tales, tigers tend to be like very foolish or kind of stupid. And so the tiger isn't able to solve the puzzle and, goes off sad. And that's basically the story. I did use AI to create these story images. It takes a lot of work because you can see, like, here's some examples of trying to make an AI image and, failing very terribly, not getting quite what I want out of it. So, having to try a lot of things. And then when I eventually get close to what I want, having to clean it up. There's a bunch of work that goes into that. Someday I'd like to find an actual artist to do these, but as of right now, I have made exactly $0 on Sangun. There's no advertising, there's nothing I sell, there's no subscription, there's no in-game purchases, there's nothing like that. It's just a game kind of purely for what it is. Maybe at some point it will be something I can use to make money, but that's not what it is right now. And so I do everything as cheaply as I can at this point. So I'd only been playing the game with my friends, showing it to them, and I wanted to announce the game publicly. And I just happened to, like a few days before I was going to announce the game, I was in a drugstore and I saw these little rubber carrots in one of the toy aisles, and I thought it was cute. And so then I kind of made this as the first image, announcing what the game is. It just says Sangun, today's Korean language game, something like that, Korean word game. And so then this is the first video that I recorded, just showing off how the game works. And I brought in one of my best friends, Hemi, and Hemi helped me show off and explain the game. I can speak Korean and explain the game in Korean, but she really helped clarify the finer details that are hard for me to explain because they're very about grammar and things like that. And so this is just kind of a demo of me playing the game and, guessing some words and then explaining what each of the hints are. And, my friend was helping me guess along, and that's what this video is. This is a chart showing basically the first 5 days of release. Basically, the sort of the flat line that you see on the left was just when my friends were playing. There was just a couple dozen friends. And then on the first day when I put out that video, I got 318 people, not just visiting Sangun, but actually completing their first game in Sangun. It was 300. And then the next day it jumped up like way, way more. And then the next day it jumped up way, way more. And then like the fourth or the fifth day, we were at 7,000. And so it was very, very rapidly becoming popular. I would say these days it hovers around 3,000, but there's been times where it's kind of fluctuated up and down. Sometimes it's been higher than 7,000. And so, yeah, so I just kind of to thank people and just to like keep things going, I made this funny image just showing for the first 4 days, the words that the word of the day for each 4 days, how many people succeeded and how many people failed. So I was just kind of showing some statistics and, thanking people and making a funny picture, again, with the rubber carrots. But then this happened. So there's a Korean website, kind of like Reddit, that has, all these different subforums and things like that. And the game started getting really popular in the indie game subforum. People basically started sharing their scores every day. And if you look at this image on the left, I just highlighted the posts that are related to Sangen. At midnight, when the word of the day changes, everybody would really quickly like try to play the game and post their scores really quick. And it would sort of like flood the channel with all these posts about Sangen all of a sudden. And so it was like really exciting seeing their feedback and seeing the reactions, and like it just kind of took off really fast. And so for that website, the website's called DC Inside, by the way. I sort of saw a problem, which was whenever people would post the score, if you look on the left here, you'll see there's like eggplant, apple, eggplant, banana, and then question mark, eggplant, question mark, eggplant. Those question marks are actually carrots. But for whatever reason, DC Inside doesn't render the carrot emoticon correctly. And so when people would post their scores, like share their scores with each other, it would look kind of broken like this. And so what I decided to do was I did an update to the game where I added a button, the DC logo. And when you click that button, instead of sharing the emoticon version, it shares the written out name of the fruit or the vegetable. So basically I just made a way where people using that website could share in a way that didn't look broken. I added a couple other options. So the horse in Korean is mal, and word in Korean is also mal. So they're both mal. And so when you click the horse, it's like basically the spoiler version where it shares the mal, the word, as well as the hints that you got next to that word. And so that's what you're seeing sort of in the bottom right. And then the eyeball. Some people who were posting their scores would post basically a screenshot of the game, but then they would hide the guesses that they made because they didn't want to give spoilers to other people. And so I made this eyeball button that when you click it, it will hide the words that you guessed. So that way you can share without spoilers. You just cycle through different visibility modes. I made that update, and then one of the people who run the community for DC Inside contacted me and said, "Can you do a Ask Me Anything, an AMA with our subforum?" And so I just made a post saying, hey, my name's Jeep. I made this game called Sangen, and if you have any questions for me, I'll answer your questions. And I this image on the left is sort of my proof image, like proving in my mouth. It's the letters that spell out DC, which is the name of the website. So showing that I'm a real person and this is really me posting this. So there you go, the rubber carrots again, always using those. And so, yeah, this was a really popular post. It got people, more excited and interested in the game and learning about who I am and why I made this game, things like that. But then there was a problem. The game got too popular too fast. And what I mean by that is the game's dictionary only had 6,000 words, which it's a lot, but it's not even close to enough. People very often would enter a word and it would display, hey, this word isn't in the dictionary, try again. I set up a backend where whenever people enter an invalid word, I could pull up what are the most popular invalid words, look them up make sure they're real words in the dictionary, and if so, then I could add them to the game. My plan was to, over the course of a long period of time, like months or a year, bit by bit, keep adding more and more words to the dictionary. But since so many people showed up so fast, the biggest complaint about the game was there's a lot of words that are not valid, that should be valid. And so I sort of took it upon myself to add them as quickly as I humanly could. And so for about 3 or 4 weeks, every single day, I would spend a couple hours going through these lists, adding things to the dictionary, verifying words. And so when we started out with 6,000, now the dictionary is at about 20,000 words. So it took a long time to get there, but now there's actually not every word. I still get ones that slip through that I need to fix, but at least it's not at a critical stage where everything's on fire. And then I accidentally shipped an update with the debug mode enabled. And in the debug mode, there's a button that will clear all your personal data. And so, of course, people clicked that button and deleted all their data. And this was a huge mistake on my part. And so this is an image I made just apologizing. Here it just says, sorry, basically. I had to say, okay, I made this mistake. Here's what I'm going to do so that this mistake doesn't happen again. And so I made changes to the code so it's not possible to ship debug mode again like that. But yeah, mistakes happen, and just I try to own up to them whenever they do happen, and let people know how I'm going to fix it. So then for April Fool's Day, I did sort of a joke where anytime you entered a word, it would show the double caret and then immediately revert back to the actual hint that you were supposed to get. And then when you guess the actual word, it would show the double apple and then switch to the double carrots. So this was April Fool's Day. And this was just a funny idea that I had, and people responded to it really well. They thought it was kind of a funny prank. And it also, the word of the day on this day was pabo, which means fool or idiot. And so having words that are themed to specific events or specific national holidays or, important holidays and things like that, people thought was really fun. And so in the word of the day, I've handpicked a couple words for the upcoming 4 years of holidays and events. So then another thing started happening. Community sort of responded by making some memes as well. People started making their own stories about the tiger, sort of a sequel following on the events at the end of the game. And so it seemed like there was quite a bit of interest in continuing the story. And this other thing that was kind of happening was kind of cool is one of my friends, their son who's I think 7 years old, would play the game, solve the word of the day, and then he would want to play more, but there was no additional words to play. And so what he would do is sort of like if you've ever played Hangman on paper with your friends, he would play a paper version of Sangun with his dad and say, hey, Dad, guess my word. And his dad would guess a word, and then his son would write the hint. So basically making a puzzle for a family. I thought that was really cool. And then on the right, you can see this is somebody made their own hand-drawn sort of comic explaining what are the rules of the game and why do people play it and how does it work. And I thought this was really cute. And then bottom left is just somebody spelling out the name of the game using these blocks that are used for teaching children how the writing system works. And so, yeah, I started thinking about sort of some educational aspects of the game and things like that. And so I basically felt like I should do kind of a big update to the game, add a big new feature, add some more story. And that's what this is. So in the middle, you'll see sort of this pencil kind of circled. This is after you complete the word of the day, you can create your own puzzle, and then it just creates a link. You can send that link to anybody, and anybody who clicks that link can play your custom puzzle. And so I thought this would be a cool way for power users who wanted to do more than one puzzle per day. They have to share with the community to be able to play these puzzles. And there's one small restriction, which is it can't use any consonants or vowels that were in the word of the day that day. So every single day when you want to create your own puzzle, it's sort of a puzzle in itself where you have to figure out what is a word that you can create using the remaining consonants and vowels that weren't used previously. It also means that people tend to make puzzles that are a little bit more advanced, more obscure or difficult words. So when somebody plays your custom puzzle, they've already eliminated maybe 4 or 5 consonants and vowels that were from the word of the day. And so it's a little easier to guess a difficult word. Then on the left side here, you'll see that the story, what I ended up doing, instead of just being a sequel, was actually sort of a mirror image of the first story. So the first story is about the girl who owns the vegetable shop. And the second story is about the tiger. And it explains why was the tiger stealing the vegetables in the first place? Because that was a question that people asked a lot. They're like, tigers eat meat. Why did they want the vegetables? And so I had to come up with a plausible explanation for why this is. And I also introduced a new character, a stripeless tiger. Her name is Pumpkin. And before the update, there's a button you can click to get a hint. That hint was an orange because carrots are orange. And so the correct hints are also orange. So you click an orange, you get a hint. But I actually changed the orange to a pumpkin in the game. And so this was the permanent change I made. And it ties into the story. Why is this character named Pumpkin related to the hint pumpkin? Well, it's, spoilers if I tell you, but there's kind of a loose connection between the two. The last thing, if you look in the upper right, I added dark mode because there's a lot of people who play this game at midnight, literally at midnight, and they don't want their eyes blasted by a white screen. And so, I added dark mode. A lot of people were requesting that. So there's been lots of usability upgrades that I've been doing over time based on what people suggest and what people want and things like that. And then this crazy thing happened. All of a sudden, kind of out of the blue, I got an invitation to Play Expo. You can see it's written as Play X4, but 4 in Korean you can sort of pronounce as po. And so Play Expo is a pun, of course, means expo. And hey, look at this picture. If you look, I'm the one guy in the tan suit, I guess, with the tan shoes near the right, pushing a button. And what this is the opening ceremony of the event. And I got to stand there on a podium and press a button that released some confetti and shot off some fireworks. So that was really cool. And while I was at the event, I had the opportunity to meet with a lot of Korean developers who were all there showing their games at the expo. And I decided I wanted to interview as many developers as I could. So I ended up talking to 25 developers, recorded all these. I posted all the interviews that I did on my YouTube channel, and they have English subtitles. So if you want to watch those interviews, they're out there. The other thing was that the people running the expo said they would provide a booth for me to show my game, Sangun. And I brought some cool little gifts, basically like these little carrot erasers and pencils. And then I brought the Portal board game, which is something that I designed many years ago. So I brought that and gave that away as prizes to people. So basically people would draw 2 cards, and the 2 cards that they drew would have, the Sangun hints, the fruits and vegetables. And depending on the 2 cards that they got, whatever combination, they would get one of those prizes. If they got double carrot, they would get the best prize. And if they got double apple, they would get my autograph. So a lot of people wanted that, which was cool. On the last day of the expo, I gave a presentation. This was a presentation not just about Sangun, but about sort of my career, what I've done in games, working at Valve, working on Portal, Team Fortress, Half-Life, all the different things I've worked on. And then anybody in the audience who had questions, they could ask me questions, and I responded back to them. It was a limit of, I think, 200 seats at the presentation, but 400 registered. And so they just started packing people in, and then there was standing room only, and I don't know, there was probably 500 people. And then this is after the presentation. There was a big lineup of people who wanted to meet me, get my signature, say hi. And, I just shook hands with everybody and talked to them and was super fun. Then this happened. So there was a pretty famous streamer who saw the game. Yeah, so he'd ask people who were watching the stream what word they wanted to guess. He'd wait for their word, and then he'd input their word. And then, based on that and some other articles that were written about the presentation I gave, this crazy thing happened, which is there's a Korean game community called Minimap, where people share their stories and reviews and daily life about different games that they're playing. And when people share the games that they're playing, it registers on Minimap as people interacting with that game. And very suddenly, Sangen became the #1 most talked about game for the first week of June. And so that was like, it really blew me away. I was like, I can't even believe it. Like, how did this happen? Especially compared to some of the games that are on the list. And so I was like, okay, that's crazy. And then the next week it was #1 again. And then the next week it was #1 again. And then the next week it was #1 again. 4 weeks in a row it was #1. And then one of the guys who works at Minimap contacted me and he said, hey, your game is really, really popular on our community site. It'd be great if we could do some kind of event together. So we put together an event for a new mode that I created called Scavenger Hunt. Basically, you're trying to guess multiple words one after the other as fast as possible. So this is the contest that we made. They're competing on time, trying to see who is the best Sangen player in the world. First prize gets some free chicken and cheese balls, and the second prize gets a chicken sandwich, and the third prize gets some donuts and coffee. And so the way this event works is every single month for 1 day per month, everybody in the community would be able to compete in this mode again. And it always happens on the last day of the month. I made a 3rd chapter of the story to sort of support this mode. And so on the last day of the month, which in the story is the 33rd day of the month, there's a scavenger hunt. And this is actually a prequel to the 1st and 2nd chapters, where we learn about Pumpkin, the stripeless tiger, how Pumpkin lost their stripes. So basically, Pumpkin sort of cheated a little bit, and because they cheated, the wind god blew very, very, very hard, and then blew off all the stripes of the tiger. And so that's sort of the backstory of how Pumpkin lost her stripes. But if you look here, this is the original image generated by DALL-E. I've not found a single AI that can create a stripeless tiger. Any time in the story where I have a stripeless tiger, I have to go and I have to hand paint out all the stripes because AI cannot create this image on its own. And so it's been fun, but that's been the most time-consuming part of making these images, is painting all the stripes off the tiger. This is the stream that we did leading up to the scavenger hunt tournament with Minimap. This is George, who contacted me and set up all the event, and we explained the rules of the new mode and then said, okay, everybody go and play, go get your chicken. And it was a really, really fun event. And so after the event, I just made this little statistic chart showing how many people got all 3 words right, or how many people didn't get all 3 words right, and of them, how many people got 0, 1, or 2 words correct. And then on the far right, this is sort of the minutes for how long it took people to complete all 3 words. Some people actually got less than 2 minutes. So it was really, really impressive seeing how quick people could do this. And then there was kind of more of an explosion of memes within Minimap, where people were sharing like really funny images related to the game. In the upper left, you'll see somebody actually made a Sangen recipe. So there's eggplant, mushroom, garlic, carrot. They didn't use an apple, they used a tomato, but they wanted to make a recipe based on the game, which is kind of funny. And anytime people will see like 2 carrots together, like, at in a picture or at a store or whatever, these aren't necessarily related to Sangen, but like people sort of have that image in their mind now, these 2 carrots together, and will send me really funny pictures of stuff like that. So while I was in Korea, one of the cool things I saw when I was sightseeing was I went to this museum that's in a cave. It's an old mining cave from back in the day where they would extract gold and silver and copper. And they had on display these coins. And this was really inspiring to me because I had also kind of already been thinking about a way to do like a gold, silver, and bronze reward based on how well somebody completed a puzzle. And so that leads into the most recent update that I added to the game. This one, I added a 4th chapter, and I'll kind of explain what that is in a second. And then on the far right, you can see the update. And what it is every single week on Monday, you get basically a report card. And the report card shows how well you did each day of that week. And if you skip a day, then you don't get anything. And if you score very, very well, then you get gold. And the reason I added this mode is there's some people who play the game not every day. And they can't participate in earning a streak, because for earning a streak, you have to play every single day. There's some people who play 2-3 times a week. And so I started getting feedback that the people who play the game less often want to still be able to show like what skill they have in the game and show their accomplishments, how long they've been playing. And, I already have a daily mode. I already have a monthly mode, which is the scavenger hunt. So I decided to add this weekly mode. And the thing about this weekly mode, the reason it's good for players who play less often, is when you see this report card of your scores, like what coins basically you're earning, you only earn 1 per week. So in this image, I have a bronze, 2 silver, and a gold. If I click the OK button, I only get the 1 gold coin. And if I played just 1 day that week and just got silver, then I would get 1 silver coin. And this sort of levels the playing field for people who are playing every day or just once a week. As long as they're skilled players, they're both earning these coins at the same rate. And where streaks, like you lose it as soon as you fail or as soon as you skip a day, coins always stick around. You earn coins and it's a number that keeps going up. And the story itself, again, kind of ties into this. Every week, the old man will take some of his earnings and send them back to his family in his hometown via this carrier magpie. Magpie is a very important bird in Korean culture, and so, one day the old man on his long journey home, crossing a frozen river, the ice breaks, he falls in, and nobody wants to help him. But then a little girl comes up and says, anybody who saves this man, I'll give them the money that I have in this pouch. Somebody saves him. She gives the money to the person who saved him, and then he learns that the girl who saved him was actually his granddaughter, and all the money that she had given up was the same money that he had been sending back to his family, all these years. And so this is kind of based on actually an existing Korean fairy tale, sort of like teaching this sort of like morality of the story. Then this last thing, every year there is a day when they celebrate the creation of the written language, Hangul, which is the Korean written language. And so Minimap contacted me again and said, on Hangul Day, it's very closely tied to the written language, which is related to the game. Let's do another event for that. And so I didn't make a new mode because I only had a couple days to prepare. But what we did is everybody could create their own custom puzzles, share them on Minimap, and whoever got the most replies on their post, they got a prize. And it got a lot of people like playing the game. And so, yeah. And then I am in the middle of working on a really big update right now. I'm not going to explain exactly what it is because it'll be a fun surprise. But I'm really excited about it. It's something that people have been asking for a long time. But yeah, that is the story of Sangun. I just wanted to lay it all out here for people who don't speak Korean, who haven't been following, what's going on or with me, or just put it all in one place and tell the story. I didn't expect it to be so popular. I thought this will be a fun little game that I could just make and then nobody will play it, and then I can move on and do something else. But it turns out to be popular enough that I really want to support the community, to add new features, to keep kind of evolving the game and changing things up and having that dialogue with the community, playing back and forth on each other. And yeah, that's the game. I guess I always say this at the end of my English videos, but I don't do a lot of English content on this channel, but I do have a couple dozen English videos at this point. I have a specific playlist for just my English videos, so if you want to just watch the English ones, you can go do that very easily. And if you want to subscribe, go for it. Occasionally I do post English videos. Sometimes I post videos with English subtitles, but yeah, that's it. That's what I've been doing for the last year. This game, I shipped it publicly in March, but I've been working on it since around October, around November last year. And yeah, it's been really fun. It's been really really weird, really weird time. Yeah, I hope I can keep working on this for quite a while longer. I have a lot more ideas or things I want to add to it or things I want to play around with, and so we'll see where it goes. We'll see how it evolves. Thanks so much for listening, and yeah, if you come check out my other videos, thanks for that too. That's all. Talk to you later. Bye.